Hello and welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. And in honor of Easter weekend, we're going on an insane Easter egg hunt in honor of Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One. And with us today as a special guest is my good friend Jim, expert on the book. How's it going?
Going great, man. How you all doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, Mr. Kyle Nash.
Perfect that you make the Easter egg reference, because I have to tell you the only thing it was missing was the goddamn bunny.
It could have been there somewhere in the hordes of other references.
I'm trying to tell you.
You just take one picture of that final battle scene, which is all over the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, and you can dedicate hours of analyzation just trying to pick out everything on screen.
Yeah, last thing I saw, somebody found 186 Easter eggs throughout the whole movie, including the war scene. That was the most they could find, and God, were they even overwhelmed. They're like, there's way too much. We're never going to find all this stuff.
You know, if we had people like that in the film, the 5-year-long Easter egg hunt would have lasted about 5 minutes. Let's be honest. But before we delve too far into it, we are going to be going spoiler-free up until this time. We'll give you ample warning. But I really want to know, what were your first impressions of this film, and did it live up to your expectation? I'm going to start with you, Kyle.
Well, listen, we already set the bar last week with the required viewing when we had Tokyo J on, that it had to clear Tron to even have a hope to be talked about, and it definitely did that. They took the time to flesh things out where Tron didn't, and the visuals were money as hell. I got to be honest, I saw the trailer. I was prepared to talk all sorts of smack at our good guest here for forcing us to cover this turd, because, oh my God, the trailers made me just look and just, no, don't waste my life like this, Jim. But nonetheless, you know, it's not going to change my life, but I had a good time with it.
Awesome. And now, Jim, you're a big fan of the book. You've been recommending it to me for a long while, and it's on my shelf right behind me. So, as a fan of the book, did the movie live up?
Well, I would say, first off, let me say that the movie I thought was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. It was very fast paced, but it kind of brought you into the world in a more updated version of the book. The book does, obviously, just like everything, Jurassic Park, Sphere, and I know I'm like quoting 1,000 Crichton books, timeline, you know, the books always have way more detail. But I really think this movie stayed true to the actual spirit of the book. It really, Spielberg could not have done a better job. And, you know, you see all the haters with their reviews about how it's an orgy of 80s nostalgia, and that's all it is. It's completely shallow. It's, 1,000 yards long and a pixel deep, you know, but it's a fun movie. Whether you've read the book or not, it did the best job it possibly could have. And for the fans of the book, there's thousands of Easter eggs that you can see in the background, but you don't actually have to read the book to enjoy it. It's a really entertaining, nostalgic movie. That's all it is. It definitely lives up to my expectations. It actually exceeded it, because I, as Demos, you for sure know, I hate movie adaptations of books. They're awful. They are terrible. They never get it right. There's very few exceptions. And this one, I give it a seal of approval.
Yes, on first inspection, Ready Player One just looks like intellectual property potpourri, unlike anything we've seen in live action form since Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was also produced by Steven Spielberg, directed by Robert Zemeckis, whose 1980s persona and film catalog is all over this film, from The DeLorean to even Alan Silvestri, who did the score for Back to the Future, dropping some of those notes in the score for this. But the best part about it was I never felt, with little exception, and those few exceptions I think were handled well, that the Easter eggs enveloped the film, that it became all about the dazzle of what is being included. When they do point stuff out, it happens to be a joke. It never became excessive, in my opinion.
Which is actually a really narrow road that Spielberg had to walk down. I mean, you got Warner Brothers, Microsoft, Valve, you've got Sega, Atari, Nintendo,
You're really going to try to list all these right now?
No, I'm just giving the big highlights because I do not have that much time. It is not going to have that long of an episode. But you have all these, like you said, Demos, you got all these intellectual properties, and it very easily could have just clouded the entire movie. Like, oh, here's a reference here, here's a reference here. Check out this, check out that. Isn't this cool? Oh my god! And it didn't do that. I don't feel like it did. I feel like it actually gave each individual thing just enough of a tease on the screen to where you look for it and you're like, oh, that is so cool. I remember that. You know, there's those tiny little Easter eggs. Like, we're gonna say Easter eggs 1,000 times. It should be a drinking game, but there's things from everybody's childhood, especially people who grew up in the '80s. And the nice thing with the movie is that it bridged the gap because the book was all '80s. This is '80s, '90s, early 2000s,
70s,
70s. It bridged a good gap. Whereas, like, you know what? Let's include as many things as possible. But let's at least make them relatable to our audience, so we're not just subjugating it to one little small group.
And it did showcase some properties that aren't as well known and some that are underrated, from the Iron Giant to even anime such as Akira, and the motorcycle showing up. Before we delve into spoilers, briefly, was there anything that you guys didn't particularly like about the film? And I can start. I felt that the villain was a little weak. Now, I like Ben Mendelsohn. I think that he did a superb job in, and Kyle, you're going to love this, I think he did a great job in Rogue One. But I think that in this film, he came across as more of a John Hughes era principal. I didn't feel like he was a very strong antagonist.
I feel like Sorento was a failure in the movie. He did a good job as a corporate jerk, but I don't feel like he was really threatening, like you guys said. I completely agree. In the book, he's this cold-blooded guy who's just like, cool, you're not going to cooperate? Click. Boom. In the Oasis, he's an intimidating force. He looks like evil Superman. He's got the contacts with bounty hunters. He's an imposing figure. He looks like a scary guy you'd walk up to. It's like, oh, crap. But you're right. Ben Mendelsohn even said in interviews, I'm not playing the same Nolan Sorento that is in the book. He plays a different version that he feels is more correct. And I can kind of understand that because this version comes off as a corporate asshat, which is basically what Wade Watts calls him out on in the office when, they're discussing, having him sell out. That's not a spoiler. Don't worry, guys.
He's the scheming corporate mogul, but at the same time, if you're setting him up as a threat, and he's going after these kids, and they display scenes of him being intimidated by his own henchwoman, and he's already you're dropping the threat level every time you do something like that. It takes away from his character and his final stand.
I would say yes, but at the same time, it just goes to prove, like, the guy looks like he's got a lot of teeth. Because you got to remember, in the movie. Sorry, I'm gonna try not to say in the book. In the movie, the Oasis is everybody's life. You live, you work, you breathe, you go to school. It's everybody's thing. That's the only way people can escape from the drudgery of real life. And Sorento, his avatar, scares a lot of people. He's leader of the Sixers. He's in charge of everything. He's just got all this stuff at his disposal. You see him get defanged by basically getting emasculated by this subordinate lady that you're talking about. And the fact that he's down to bribing children to try and win a contest. It just makes him look like even more of a tool, which is what his role is. He's made to be just the guy you want to hate, and it works.
The literal corporate tool.
Exactly.
This kind of highlights a little bit of the one issue I have. I really did enjoy the film, but I think one of the issues that I had with it was that the danger level in the virtual world. Yes, there is a lot of stake, I guess, if Ben Mendelsohn will end up, possibly taking it over and monetizing it and making everything worse. But at the same time, when these characters are in quote unquote peril in the virtual world, there is a subconscious safety net. That yes, if they die, yes, they lose all their treasure and their coins, which is I find it really interesting that they actually specifically say that the coin value in the game in the Oasis is stronger than legitimate currency, possibly a timely reference to the rise of cryptocurrency, but that's I digress. I found the film became much more gripping when the threat bled into the real world.
Sure.
That's when I actually became much more invested in the film. Now, while everything in the virtual world is dazzling, and that initial car chase with the DeLorean, with the T-Rex chasing after, with King Kong rampaging, you don't have a soul if you can't crack a smile while watching that.
Agreed.
You know, especially towards the end of the film, when you're cutting back and forth between the threat in real life and then what's on screen, I was much more invested in what was happening in real life because the danger was much more palpable. I think the last third is a little drawn out.
Yes.
Especially in the big battle. So when you have that big battle happening on screen with that subconscious safety net, and you're having real danger and a real chase happening in the real world, it just ends up getting pulled apart too quickly for me.
Spoilers, bitches. Spoilers.
I agree. The peril thing is a major problem in the storytelling of the movie. I have very few problems with the movie, but this is one of them. In the book, for those who have read it, Daito actually gets murdered by IOI in the real world. He gets thrown from a damn balcony while he's in the middle of completing the second quest. So Homeboy goes for a flight without wings, and it ends as expected. But in the movie, you like you said, you do not get that sense of, oh my god, the person that I've been watching develop in this movie has died. It's an avatar. They completely missed that translation where in the book, if your character dies, you start back at level 0 with nothing. You got to restart everything. They touched barely on it with the loss of stuff. IROC's comment of, I got 10 years worth of stuff in me. But beyond that, and that's even after Daito gets killed in the movie, he's still alive at the end. He still gets a happy ending. No pun intended, Kyle. But, I agree. It completely kind of, this is going to sound like a really bad oxymoron, dehumanizes the virtual world of that character. It really does.
At some point, like when they're being hunted down, of course it adds to the drama there. That's a good thing. What I could not, in fact, stand was this bullshit surrounding him trying to find a way to plug the right keys into the hole, for goodness sake. I like that they did the call out of, it's a key in a hole, why can't you, how hard is it to figure out? The fact that somebody shouted that out. The fact that you had the moment where he almost deletes all of the Oasis, okay, that was funny.
Yeah.
Thing. I haven't seen that much overextending of one's production to try to create drama that didn't ever really actually exist since I watched Argo and they did that bullshit with the plane when they were on their way out of Iran. Okay, fucking stop it.
But you know who the master of that really was during the 1980s of elongating for suspense, but doing it very well? It was a man who is quite often referenced in this movie, Robert Zemeckis. Take a look at the entire ending of Back to the Future. It's that kind of style. The one scene that took me a little out of the movie because of the way it was blocked, the way that it ended up playing out was when Mendelsohn at the very, very end is approaching the van with the gun drawn, and the moment he pulls the gun, the entire crowd of like hundreds parts so he can go and shoot like 3 or 4 kids. That entire scene was messy, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely.
I would agree. As current cinema goes, it is messy. However, you got to remember this is a movie that is as you guys have both said in previous episodes when Kyle's pitching about watching Ready Player One and doing this whole episode. No offense. is it's a movie that remembers and appreciates nostalgia instead of recreating new versions of it. So if you look at older 80s movies and some of the newer ones in towards the late of it, there is that happy ending, that scene in the car where Ben Mendelsohn's talking to Fatale or Finale or whatever the hell her name is. I don't even know why she was in the movie, but when they're in the cop car, it's like, you got to listen to me really carefully. And she smacks him in the face.
Right in the face.
Classic 80s movie. That is a classic thing from the villains getting arrested and, everybody living happily ever after. With the book, and just like any other book to movie adaptation, there's so many details that you cannot cram in. And this one is probably the patron saint of, oh my God, I can't fit this crap into this movie, because there's literally tens of thousands of references I need to put in. And the best thing about it, absolute best thing about this movie, is if you've read the book, if you love the book, most of the stuff isn't in there in the movie. But if you have a sharp eye, you can see Serenity. You can see the X-Wing. You can see Rush 2112's album cover. You can see the replicant's eyes in the scene where they're tricking Sorento. There's all these small little shout-outs, and that is the Easter egg for the person who's actually read the book.
Well, even the DeLorean had the kit red wave at the front.
Exactly.
I think one of the highlights for me in this film, and this is definitely a spoiler, and I didn't want to give it away in my review, but now I'm free to do so. I love the show. So my favorite sequence in the film was the when they delve into The Shining.
Yes.
And the recreation of the hotel. But I think the most brilliant thing they did with it, I mean, it could have been easy for them. Oh, we just walked in the hotel. Oh, they're the little girls, etc., etc., etc. But for a film that's so chock full of references, actually. And these characters understanding and being invested in these references, having a character who has never seen the movie,
yes,
coming across and interacting with all of this. Oh, there's a naked lady, and we all know how that scene plays out. I thought that was a brilliant touch.
I agree. That was fantastic. And I just sat there watching like, oh my God, they just did the coolest thing they possibly could have done. And they put them in the movie. And brought it right there.
But it made sense. I love the way they set it up about a creator not liking his creation, etc. I thought that was a masterstroke.
And that's the best thing. Like, there's a lot of hate for people, and I swear to God, I'm trying not to keep referencing the book, but I'm gonna have to. There's no gates in this movie at all. There's the keys and the clue, and that's it. There was a challenge. You get a key. And another challenge, and then you got the next key to go to the next gate. This one didn't have it, but in the book, they actually have two scenes where this exact same thing kind of happened, where they actually have to go and be in the world of a movie, an iconic movie. In the book, it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail and War Games. The best thing about it was that they changed the challenge, and Ernest Cline actually said in interviews as well, there's no way that no one is going to sit there and watch some guy play Joust, which is, for those of you who've never read the book, it's an old arcade game.
It's what daddies used to play in the arcades.
Yeah, exactly. With ostriches and storks, and you kill people and they turn into little green eggs. So don't ask. But
it sounds like a video game from the 80s.
It is. You're not going to sit there and watch some guy playing it with an undead D&D character as the boss. No one's going to sit there and watch them do that. So they had to rewrite them to make them cinematic, and they had to make them interesting to the viewer. So you have the race at the beginning, you have the Shining scene, and then you have a really great throwback to the book with adventure. That actually really kind of brought it all back together and simplified it to the right point, where it wasn't about winning; it was about enjoying the game. And that's what the Oasis was, at least the contest was about, I think.
Oh, that was the, from my understanding, that was the masterstroke ending of the book and the movie. Although part of me, the masochistic side of me, really wanted to see somebody die playing the E.T. Atari game.
That or Pitfall. I'd have been fine with either one.
I think we all died a little bit inside thanks to the E.T. video game.
They didn't even include it on the master board of all the Atari games. E.T. was nowhere to be found. It was probably buried under that somewhere in the desert, just like what happened in real life.
Yep.
But Colin, I'm actually interested now. Spare me if I'm wrong, but you haven't seen The Shining, right?
No, I haven't.
So this is extremely meta. I really wanted to have your take on this scene of a character who's never seen the movie, experiencing the movie from a guy who's never seen the movie.
Well, and listen, you've seen enough to know the big things that are coming. You know there's an axe, you know there's a naked chick somewhere, and you know that there's two creepy little girls. And I'm like, wait, is he about to see the... Yeah, he is. Oh, great, he's talking. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Ah, blood. Ah. And then, you know, he ends up 237, and people in the theater going, ooh. I'm like, oh, hell, what happens now? Like, wow, that adolescent just got their life ruined with that experience. And then, oh my God, axes, here's Johnny, ah! And then I'm like, wait, how did we end up in something out of the Haunted Mansion and they're dancing with this chick? Oh, right, okay, movie, here we go.
Jim brought up a point earlier about how in the book they actually do kill off some of the characters, they raise the stakes, etc. And yet the film ends up in certain sections taking the safer, more family-friendly route, and yet in other sections they delve into The Shining. Within a pixel worth, they get away from showing any explicit nudity, and they drop the F-bomb. It feels like it's a little disjointed, like it wants to be a family film, but I would say it's not daring to be edgy because it actually does go to some of these places.
It was odd when, like, you know, I was like, oh, he said shit. Oh, fucking shit. You know, it's something that's going to have a lot made of it, and it really shouldn't, in my opinion. It's different when you're killing people, but, like, you don't want to make them martyrs that overshadow the guy that gets the goddamn Easter egg. Because at the end of the day, someone had to die for him to own the ability to control this game. With all the stuff that's out there in the news about craziness with gamers being addicted to games and shit like that, I think that goes down a road that they're not really wanting to touch. I think it's less about protecting Bobby, Jimmy, and Susie from, you know, seeing someone die than it is, you know, somebody else who's affected by some sort of a game addiction like that, and it becoming a message about that, when I really don't think this movie is looking to touch that problem. They're trying to keep it to be an experience where the game is trying to be a metaphor to topple corporate America, or topple corporate craziness, right?
The movie is supposed to be also a cautionary tale. I mean, the ending of the movie, they shut down the Oasis for 2 days a week so that people they're not completely absorbed with it. There is some kind of forced expulsion for it to go out and enjoy the real world. And in the book, they actually leave it open-ended. They don't tell you what happens. They just say, here's the button, use it for good. He goes out and kisses Artemis and meets her for the first time. It happens in the last 4 pages of the book. But the last line of the book is, paraphrasing and bastardization, I never wanted to go back into the Oasis again. And the point of it is, the book and the movie is to be cautionary, because this stuff is becoming real. You have cryptocurrencies that are more stable than a lot of governments. You have virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality, which is becoming more and more prevalent and more commercially available to the consumer. And it's super easy to just disappear in things like that. I mean, you look at places like South Korea and Japan, where you've had people literally die playing a video game because they can't handle what the real world is like, and they get paid more money to do that than any other job that they could possibly do, with no matter how many degrees you throw at them.
Or let children die.
Exactly.
Or just like the culture, internet culture as it is. I mean, right now, the three of us are talking, having this entire conversation from 3 different locations across the country. And you guys are seeing my avatar. You're not even seeing me because my feed is going directly into my OBS program. So, I mean, we have reached to a degree that existence, and obviously virtual reality is something that's growing in popularity. I mean, I can see us the world presented here isn't that far off from where we're going.
It really isn't, and that was his point of view. The author and even Wade, it was in the character Wade, is that the world sucks, but unless you're willing to do something about it, you can't complain. You can run, but you're not going to run forever. And at some point, you're going to actually have to stand up and take an active role. And I think that was the most prevailing moral of the book was, yeah, there's money. Yeah, you've got control of the whole thing, but what are you going to do with that? You know, I agree with the reality of the stuff you were just saying, Demos, with how real it's becoming. And I feel like if you dig just a little bit below the surface, this movie isn't to glorify the 80s or pop culture, things like that. It's really, there's more to life than this.
Well, one that's rooted in our own nerdy passions, making it all the more real to anybody who experiences the film.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I mean, I will say that I did enjoy the film. I think it was a fantastic ride. It had many good moments. Yes, it had some flaws, and I think the flaws keep it from being one of, ironically, Spielberg's best from the 80s. But I would definitely recommend it. I think it's absolutely spectacular that they're releasing a film chock full of Easter eggs during Easter weekend. I actually like the fact that, at least as far as I have seen, that they're not using that as a marketing angle. It's kind of just there.
Well, that's meta as shit, Demos. Easter eggs on Easter weekend, and that existence and correlation itself being an Easter egg. Holy shit.
Also, because I'm super more meta than that, Ernest Cline's birthday was March 29th, date of release for Ready Player One. Boom. You're welcome. I feel like this movie, and you guys are going to laugh at this because I literally just watched one of your episodes today or yesterday where one of your guests was saying that this would have been better as a miniseries. This would have been better as a miniseries. It's a great movie. I loved it. But I feel like making it a trilogy of miniseries, Gate 1, Gate 2, Gate 3, Challenge 1, Challenge whatever, I feel like that could have really kind of brought you into the world a little bit more, because 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes was not enough to really get you in. Both are good in their own right. And that's not a cop-out answer because, like I said before, I hate book to movie adaptations. My biggest hatred of this is, as you know, Timeline. Good.
I can't blame you there.
Bleeping, smurfing God. That was an abomination that should have been torched on the cutting room floor. This one changed enough to keep it relevant and to have a new audience come in and be curious about what it's based off of, the source material, but it still actually respected the people who'd read it, obsessed over it, even if they didn't. If you were a fan of Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, 2001: A Space Odyssey, anything nerdy, manga, anime, whatever, there's something in this movie for you. This movie caters to literally everyone who has some kind of a slightly nerdy or super nerdy interest. And it brings all that together in a really neat package where you can just sit back and have fun.
You know, I mean, for my money, this where the movie falls short is where exactly you would expect it to. I mean, it was a visual masterpiece. There were some things where you had to suspend belief if you had spent any time actually playing games. For one, oh, look, the first mystery is that I go backwards. Some idiot out there in some basement or somewhere would have done that just to troll the thing for a minute and then accidentally gotten the key out of it, okay? And by the way, can we be honest for 30 seconds? And I know they're doing it to identify the characters, all right? There would have been about a bazillion DeLoreans and, you know, motorcycles from Akira, okay? Sure, maybe different color schemes and little things to make them individually different, but no. I do like the way they get around that by saying, hey, look, these corporate guys are all hired or whatever. You just basically gave me the MMO version of Stormtroopers, okay? But here's the thing. The younger players of the age that would take those jobs would be way better than they are. A little bit of suspension of reality on that. They're expecting you to not y'all get all those references if you're a member of the the mainstream when it comes to this, so to speak, and not the full geek. And maybe you miss it as a detail if you're not paying attention to it like we are here on Default Assault, so we can tell you about it.
Well said. Well, that just about does it for today's episode of Default Assault. Let us know, what did you guys think of Ready Player One? What was your favorite reference? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to follow me on hilaritybydefault.com for weekly movie reviews, other fun stuff, on Twitter at Default Hilarity, and on Facebook, Hilarity by Default.
Of course, you can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, and of course on Facebook as the Student of the Game. Check out my coverage of the University of Central Florida's Pro Day as we get one last chance to see Shaquem Griffin and Mike Hughes descend onto the stage. They may not have run the 40, but they had a few statements. I got a chance to catch up with them to let you know where they might be headed, some teams they're talking to in the offseason to see where their name might be called in the NFL draft come April 26th. Of course, you would see all that on ngscsports.com or my Twitter feed or on my Facebook, where you'll find me as the Student of the Game. But in addition to my time here on Default Assault with Hilarity by Default, you can also find me on Tuesdays on the NGSC Sports Facebook page, where we go live to bring you the NGSC Sports Weekly. And of course, on Blog Talk Radio on dinner time with Tokyo J, who you've seen on this show before with episodes of The Default Assault, who Jim even quoted mentioning Tron being a series and all that other stuff. That's a good time all the way around. And hey, where else do you hear Maynard Ferguson on Blog Talk Radio as a title track? I'm just throwing that out there. Anyways,
Jim, thank you so much for joining us. You're always welcome back, and thank you for suggesting this episode for us.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
And make sure to check us out every Thursday night on Default Assault, where life is hilarious by default.